Hello, my name is Alberto Colon. I am in Chicago, Illinois, and I'm interviewing Megan DePumpo. So Megan, where did you grow up at?
I grew up in Denver, Colorado.
What was life like in Denver?
Life was uneventful. Denver was a total different place then than it is now. It was not a place where people would want to go to vacation. It was sort of the mecca of skiing and in the summers hiking. And so childhood was full of going to the mountains every weekend and then everything else was normal.
Would you say there was like a lot of violence growing up?
None.
None? What were your parents like?
At what age?
Earliest childhood.
Earliest childhood. My parents owned their own business, and my mom was super involved in our family, and my dad was sort of he made everything fun. He played games, he told jokes, and their business sort of reflected that. So he was the designer for the business, and she sort of ran the whole thing.
So like, what was your parents' business?
Before my dad started the business, he was a delivery person for FedEx. And when people, and I think they still have these now, but when people deliver packages, they have like a barcode scanner that they would scan when they drop things off, right? And then they'd put it back in like a holster, a holding thing. And my dad designed the holsters. So that's what they did, was holsters for FedEx.
So what is your favorite memory with your parents?
My favorite memory, that's a hard one. Our favorite memory. They really did Christmas really, really well. And I'm only thinking about that now because it is Christmas time. But Christmas was at my grandparents' and it was in the mountains. And so they would do Christmas like crazy. They would take we would leave carrot sticks out for the reindeer, and they would take the carrot sticks and shred them outside like the reindeer had eaten them. And they would like leave cookie crumbles all over the place, and they'd put like boot prints over like my grandparents' carpet to make it seem like Santa had been there. So Christmas mornings were always pretty magical with them.
So what was your grandparents like?
My grandparents were the best. My grandmother's still alive. My grandfather died a couple years ago from Alzheimer's, but they were amazing. My grandfather was super active, like ran maybe like 5 miles a day, always, even up until, like into his 80s, like super, super active. And my grandmother, who you have met, was super loving. Like, there are not enough wonderful adjectives in the world to describe her. Yeah.
What is your favorite memory with them?
My favorite, okay, this one's easy. So my mom was the disciplinarian of the family, right? She it did not let anything fun happen. And so when I wanted things like a new pair of shoes, it didn't happen. But my dad and her went on vacation, so my grandparents watched us. And I told my grandmother that I wanted these pair of patent leather Mary Jane shoes from Mervyn's, California, which was sort of like Kohl's. I don't think Mervyn's exists anymore. Anyway, On the way to the airport, she stopped and got me my new patent leather Mary Jane shoes, and I put them on, and we picked up my parents at the airport with them on, and my mom was pissed. But I kept the shoes. I still remember them.
So what were you and your sister like?
Ooh, my sister was, she was always the, it's the best way to describe her. She is 4 years younger than me. She is, she wanted to be around me all the time, like a younger sister. And so, so when we were really young, I found her incredibly annoying. Like, I thought she was just, she would not leave me alone. She wanted to do everything with me. And when we got older, she was, we sort of started becoming friends, was when we got older.
So do you have any favorite memories when she was, quote, the annoying sister and, quote, your friend's sister?
A memory when she was super young, we would play dress up all the time, and she would, so one of the dress up things that we played was school, and I was the teacher. And before she was born, I would line up all my stuffed animals and like teach them as part of class. And then when she was born, I then like stuffed her up in a pillow and then lined up all my other stuffed animals. So she was like one of my students. So that was one when she was younger. And then she was older, we would borrow clothes from each other, but be pissed when we borrowed clothes from each other. So like, I left for school before she did. So this is when I first started driving, and I would sneak up into her room because my room was in the basement. And so I'd sneak up into her room, steal some of her clothes before, like while she was sleeping, sneak out, change into them really quick, and leave the house. So she had no idea.
So on the topic of schooling, what was your high school like?
Oh, high school was, I loved my freshman and sophomore year. My junior year was pretty good. Senior year was long. I was ready to be done. I was really, really ready to be done. But I liked it. Yeah.
So did you and your sister go to the same high school? Like,
No, I went, and even if we did, we wouldn't have been, like, I graduated before she started high school.
Do you have any favorite memories or funny memories of your high school?
Oh, high school. Well, high school was, I mean, the biggest memory that I have from high school is, that is like sort of where I first really figured out how to voice what I liked and did not like. I fell in love for the first time in high school. I had a very long time boyfriend from high school. I did the IB program in high school, so I remember thinking about college all the time. Like, college was just like a huge part of the high school curriculum.
So, what is IB program?
International Baccalaureate. It's like AP. Like, yeah.
So, during your high school, did you already have like an idea or anything you wanted to be?
I wanted to be a marine biologist for a hot second. I wrote my IB thesis, high school thesis, on dolphins. And I don't remember anything else about it, but it was about dolphins. Um, let's see. Then there was and then I wanted to be a writer, and none of those have come to fruition. But I went into college sort of doing a basic liberal arts degree.
So what made you want to go to college?
I mean, I always knew I was going to college. It wasn't an option. College wasn't an option.
So where did you go to college?
My freshman year, I went to Santa Clara in California. Then I transferred to Boston College, which is in Boston. And my undergrad is from Boston College.
So what were your classes like?
At BC?
In general, of all years.
They were, well, okay, for the brief period of time where I was pre-med, where I thought I was going to be a doctor, the classes were huge. And they included labs, so like you would have like intro to biology, and it would be a class of like 300 people, and then there would be labs in addition to the bio. I think I dropped that major, I think like a month into it. So I had to like finish out those classes, but I was like, fuck this. This is not what I want to do at all. So my other classes were, I decided on an English major, right? So like lots of reading, blah, blah, blah. And it wasn't until my junior year that I did a minor in women's and gender studies, which was like the best decision I've ever made. And it was and so then the classes were less about, reading the books and trying to understand it. And it was like talking about theory and how gender norms impact how we view the world around us, how the world views us, and yeah.
So what did you master in?
What was my master's degree in? It was in social administration.
And what is social administration?
So at University of Chicago, the School of Social Work, Social Service Administration, SSA for short, they have two tracks. They have a clinical track, and so you could be a clinical social worker. You could have your own practice if you wanted. You could be a licensed clinical social worker at various nonprofits, or you could do the administrative track, which is what I did, where you didn't necessarily want to work in direct service with people, but you wanted to work a higher macro level of policy change. So a lot of my work was sort of in the social policy space.
So where and what is your current job?
I work at the University of Chicago in the Biological Sciences Division, in the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology, in the Lindau Lab, where I oversee the operations of the research that's conducted in the lab.
So how did you find your job?
I was applying for various positions, and a friend of mine heard that this position was open and sent me the open position, and I applied for it and interviewed and got it.
So out of all your years of education and work, who has had the greatest impact on you and why?
Personally or professionally?
Either or.
Good question. I have no idea. Professionally, I was so I had an internship while I was at the university getting my master's degree. I had an internship at this place called Donors Forum, where I was the public policy intern. So I worked on essentially whatever they needed me to, but it was a lot of statewide legislative issues that would affect the nonprofit sector. So that was sort of my space. And I met two really incredible women there who have sort of shaped how I've understood what it means to be a professional woman in a world where men are often taken more serious than a woman. So they have had an effect on me. And then personally, I would say, personally, like, everyone influences you personally, right? Like, every person you meet, good or bad, makes you who you are. Yeah.
So knowing this recording will be saved, what advice would you give to your family or anyone else who hears this recording?
Like in 10 years? Like...
Yeah.
What advice would I have? That it's super cliche to say, but you should, and so there is this philosopher, I would call him, named Joseph Campbell. I love him. Like, I love everything about him. He died. But he's great. And he has these amazing quotes and sort of perspective on life and the universe and our purpose here. And one of his sayings is, follow your bliss, for the universe will open doors where there were once walls. So the biggest piece of advice I could say is, like, you have to know what brings you joy, that, like, speaks to the very, very core of your being, and you follow it. Like, it's not going to lead you astray. Ultimately, inside of you, you know what is wrong, what is right, what you should be doing. If it will answer all those big life questions if you slow down enough to listen to it.
So, what was it like to move to a state who you had little to no knowledge of, or knew little to no one?
Well, I have done that many times in my life. I went to California my freshman year, never having any knowledge of the school or the place. I then did it again stupidly and applied to Boston College, never having been to Boston or ever visited the university. So I did that. Then I moved to Chicago, not knowing anything about it, but following someone I was in a relationship with. And every time it's worked out.
So, what was the area you first lived in Chicago like?
Well, I came here, the first time I ever lived in Chicago was the summer between my sophomore and junior year of college. So I lived here for like 2 or 3 months, and we lived in Lincoln Square. And then after I graduated, we came back and lived with a family friend in Irving Park, and then we got our own apartment in Logan Square.
So, do you like where you currently live?
I love where I currently live, yes.
So, how did you meet my father?
We met at his best friend's birthday party, and that's how we met.
What was your first impressions of him?
Oh my God, I thought he was a gangbanger. because he was dressed up as a gangbanger and I was dressed up as a car mechanic. It was a Halloween party, and I thought he was a gangbanger in real life.
So when you first met him, did you ever think you would be engaged to him?
No. Well, that's not true. And I swear on my life on this, my very first thought was, what if I told my children that the very first thought I've had of their dad was that he was a gangbanger? And like, I swear to God, that was the first thought that came into my head. But then after that, no, because I was trying to set him up with a friend. So the whole night that we talked, I was setting him up with someone else.
Really?
Really.
Well, thank you for your time. I had a very good time interviewing you.